Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the DeeMaxx disc brake kit on our 2021 Dutchmen Voltage fifth wheel toy hauler. This is what our brakes are going to look like when they're installed. You can see they're going to look just like your automotive brakes. When you go to change them out, you're going to have the same style of changing pattern that you would if you changed the brakes on your vehicle. It's much easier. You don't have to take this whole assembly apart just to check them. You should be able to see through your wheels, depending on what kind of wheels you have, to be able to see if you still have some brake pad left. If you can't see it, all you have to do is pop your wheel off. It'll look just like this. You can peek in on the back side, see how much brake pad you have left, and know whether or not you have to change them. The rotors themselves are going to have a Dacromet finish, which is going to be a salt spray tested so that it helps to protect the rotor for the time to come. It's going to have a bunch of holes here on the drum itself, the drum portion of the disc. This is going to help to drain water out for marine applications or just driving in the rain. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to help with cooling also. The louvers here are not foreign to your standard disc brakes, but these are unique to DeeMaxx brakes. They are going to help to provide a little bit of air when you're driving down the road. On the inside here, this is what I was talking about. You can check your brake pads. You know, if you pop your tire off, or if you just stick your head back behind the tire, you should be able to see this to know whether or not you're going to have to change your brakes. And you also notice this has an extremely thick construction. They have designed it. Their brakes are all designed for the military, so it goes through a very, very rigorous testing. And what they have seen is that if they test their pressure or test the higher pressure of 1600 psi with any other thickness bracket or caliper like this, it's going to bend or crack the caliper. That's why they design these so thick, so that you don't have to worry about these cracking. To get this kit installed, I highly recommend picking up the DeeMaxx triple axle line kit and the DeeMaxx actuator that is the 1600X actuator. The reason why I want you to go with the 1600X is because it has dual the capacity of the 1600 and the 1000 the models that they have for their actuators. It's designed to hold more fluid, and that more fluid capacity is for this third axle. If you get the standard 1600, they found that it's not quite enough capacity to be able to still have some left in the reservoir up there and still feed all three of these axles. Now, with all that being said, we're going to show you how to get this installation done, but if you don't feel confident in doing it yourself, or you just don't want to do it, feel free to check out our dealer locator on our website. It'll get you to the closest dealer near you that can do this installation for you. Beginner installation, if you have a TPMS system on here, I highly recommend marking your tires. We're just going to mark ours front, middle, and rear so that we know where to put them back on. Otherwise, we're going to have to reset all of our TPMS sensors on our system. And we're going to grab the appropriate socket to take our lug nuts off and remove those so we can get our wheels and tires removed. And you want to take a flathead screwdriver. We're going to go to each one of our caps, just drive it in down behind us. And we don't have to worry about protecting these caps because we do get new ones in our kit. So we'll just take these off and get rid of them. We'll remove our retainer ring. Just slide your screwdriver back behind there, pop it off. And you want to save this because we're going to be reusing these. And then you should be able to, if your axles are, if this nut is tightened down correctly, you should be able to remove it by hand. And we're also going to be saving this and the washer that's right behind it. When pulling off all these components, it's a good idea to have a paper towel laying on the ground, especially at this point where we're going to be pulling out our drum. So just pull it out. Make sure you have your hand here. You can catch that bearing. That washer I was talking about is right here. So we'll save the washer and we can get rid of the bearing. We can take the rest of our drum assembly, pull it off, set it to the side. On our second axle, when I pulled the drum off, the inner bearing and the seal actually came out, and that is not good at all. That means they've been having an issue with this for a long time. And the problem with this is the owner of this RV just had either had it serviced or did it themselves. And what they did is they just pumped a bunch of new grease in here, and that that bearing was not, or the seal was not bedded inside of the drum very well. So you can see here, I can slide this off. It doesn't look like there's any damage to this the spindle, but this seal is supposed to be inside of that drum, and it is obviously not. So this is one of the biggest issues with drum brakes, is that you can't check this kind of stuff unless you pull that off, and that is very difficult to do if you're getting ready for a trip. Just kind of a note to take. And you want to take a rag and wipe this spindle off, get all that old grease out of there. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a grease gun and pump this old grease out of the inside of the spindle. As you can see, there's still some of that nasty stuff in there. You do not want to mix that with the new grease we're going to be pumping in here later. Now we're going to take a 14mm socket, remove these nuts that are holding our brake flange. Since these are electric brakes, on the back side you're going to have these wires. You will have to cut those. We're just going to end up taping them off later on. We'll leave it here in case they ever decide to convert back. I highly doubt they will, but at least they'll be there for them to be able to use. And with our new brake flanges, before we put them on, we're going to have to beat these studs out and get some additional hardware that we have on our website. It's going to be a nut and bolt. We're going to have 5 bolts that we're going to have to put back in here, and they're just longer to accommodate for the new brake flange. So take these and you just tap it out, and these little splines are what's holding it in. So we'll just go ahead and knock these out of each one of them. Take our bolt. Each of our bolts is going to go through these holes and replace those studs. Now we're going to take our bracket for our brakes, slide it over, and you want the brake, where the brake's going to mount up, to be towards the back. So you mount it up just like this. Now we're going to take some lock washers, throw those on each one of our bolts. And then before we put the nuts on these, what I'm going to do is take some blue Loctite and just scrape that off onto each one of our bolts. This is just going to help to prevent from any of this hardware moving via vibration. It's not an absolute necessary step, but it gives me peace of mind when I'm installing this kit that I've got it on there. And we'll take one of our nuts and thread those on. And we'll come back with that 14mm socket and a 9/16 wrench on the back side and tighten these down in a star pattern. And you want to come back with a torque wrench and torque these bolts down to the specifications in your instructions. Next, we're going to pack our bearings. You can see that I've got some grease starting to come out here. And the way that I'm doing that is you take the bearing on the bottom, you're going to have this little gap here, and you're going to basically scoop the grease into that gap. And this is where you can start to see it kind of flower out of that gap at the top. That means you're getting some good grease into that gap. So just do this. There you can see that those bearings are still dry in there. We're just going to do this all the way around the bearing until we get them all packed. You can use a bearing packer. There's no harm in that. I just prefer to do it this way. That way I know that the grease is getting in there properly, and I don't have to store a bearing packer. And we're going to take a little bit extra grease, put it on inside on the race here. Then we'll take our inner bearing and drop that in. While your hands are dirty from the grease, take some of it and put it right on top of our spindle. Now with our bearing in place, and I say that because a lot of people have forgotten to put their bearing in there, we'll take our seal, set it on top. We're just using a 4.5-inch hole saw here, and we've got a little punch. We're just going to tap it till it starts guiding it down into place. And then the nice part about using this is it's going to give you even pressure, and once you hear the hole saw stop, at the metal, you'll hear the ring. So I always hear the ring once and then hit it one more time, and then it's pressed in perfectly. You want it to be buried underneath this, but perfectly level with the edge here. You don't, it's kind of hard to tell because you have this little rubber ring that looks like it's sticking up, but you don't want that to go below that, that's too low. We're gonna change over to a new pair of gloves, and we're gonna take our brake rotor, slide it over into place, and make sure that your seal pops over just like that. There's a little spring in there that'll help to hold it in place like that till we get the rest of them on and then get our outer bearing put in place. Now it's time to pack our outer bearing. I'm gonna pack the same way we packed the inner bearing. After we've cleaned all the old grease off of our washer here, we'll take it, slide it back on. And then we're going to clean the old grease off of our nut and thread that back into place. Now we're going to take an 1.5 inch socket, tighten this. You can get out a torque wrench if you want to, but we just do it by hand, tighten it, snug it up until the rotor gets hard to turn. And that is to make sure that our seal is all the way seated back on there. And then we're going to break it loose until it's at 0, which is right here. And we can hand tighten it just with our fingers. So we'll tighten it there. Then we'll take our retaining clip. And what you want is you want this to line up with, it's going to be like every other one. So these two clips here are going to straddle this point, and then these two clips here are going to be on a flat part. Looks like we're pretty well lined up right there. If it does not line up and you have to move that nut at all, do not tighten it more. You want to back it off just a smidge until you can get that clip on. Now we're going to come back with our grease gun, and we're going to pump grease in here until we see it to start flowering out of our bearing. And once you get it like this, we're going to stop for a second, give it a couple of spins. Just make sure we work it in there before we put any type of load on it. And then I'm just going to give it maybe 1 or 2 more. We can take our new cap and a soft blow hammer, get it started. And once you get it started, you want to just very gently tap around and rotate it so we get it all nice and flat here against our brake rotor. Take our brake caliper. We're going to take these, push them back because it's not going to fit if it's forward like that. There we go. Just make sure that the bolt is still, you can still push it out like that, but you want that little keeper to be back behind that seal. And we'll make sure both of them are snapped into place like that. Take this whole assembly, rotate it up into place. And then you're going to take this bolt, and this is how I find the hole it's supposed to go in. You can move it like this, and when you put pressure in on that bolt, it'll finally catch. You can spin it, and it almost always threads straight into place because of how tight this fit is here. We'll do the same thing for the bottom. We'll come back with a 13mm wrench. Ratcheting wrench helps a lot with this. Makes it go by really fast, and we'll snug these down. Now it's time to bleed our brakes. When you're bleeding your brakes, you want to start with the farthest brake caliper away from your actuator, which in this case is going to be our rearmost driver's side brake cylinder. And what we want to do is we're going to attach a little hose to the top. You want to open up this little valve. You're going to open this up, twist it open. That's going to allow the brake fluid to come through. The reason you have the hose is because you don't want it to shoot everywhere. And then you have to have somebody at the front. You can plug it in your truck, hit the brakes, the manual override on your brake controller, and it's going to force the fluid back through the hose. All right, go ahead. There we go. We can see the fluid come back through here. Once we stop seeing the air bubbles, we'll shut it off. That's good. Once you've gone through the proper sequence of bleeding your brakes, which is going to be that one that we started on, the driver's side rear, you want to go across to do the passenger side rear, and then go back over to the driver's side, do the second one, then this side. You want to zigzag your way up. Basically, you want to follow the line from the furthest path to the actuator. Once you've found out that you have, once you've gotten all the air out of the lines, what you want to do is seal off all of those fittings and then turn your actuator on for about maybe 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, just a little bit to pressurize the system, and then you want to check for leaks again. Not open anything, and you'll see little seeps coming out if you have any leaks. Take your line wrench and just give it a little bit more of a turn. Make sure you don't strip those out because they're all brass fittings, and make sure there's no leaks. You should see a little droplet of the hydraulic fluid coming out if you do have a leak. So just twist that up, test it again, and go back and forth until you have no more leaks, and then we can take all of this hose and tie it up nice and tidy up against the belly pan. Well guys, hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the DeeMaxx disc brake kit is right for you in your 2021 Dutchmen Voltage fifth wheel toy hauler.